Are you waiting for the perfect moment, the right people, the green light from life to finally begin pushing forward? But let me shock you. That moment may never come. Let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late. Your dream will never come knocking on your door. It won't send you a reminder. It won't beg you to rise. If you want to see it happen, you must push yourself like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. The truth is, you are the miracle you're waiting for. You've got to rise with grit, move with intention, and say to yourself, this time I'm not quitting. This time I'm making it happen. God has already placed the seed of greatness in you. But listen, even a seed must push through the soil to reach the sun. The breakthrough you're praying for, it's on the other side of your effort. So this is your call, not to feel ready, but to get up and go anyway. Push yourself. Do it tired. Do it unsure. Do it afraid. But do it. Because when you do, heaven backs you. Strength multiplies and purpose ignites. I remember a time in my own life when I kept saying, when things settle down, I'll start. I had vision, I had dreams, I had passion, but no motion. I thought time would somehow open a magical door for me. It never did. What I learned is this. God has already given me what I needed, but He wasn't going to push me. I had to push myself. And until I did, nothing changed. There's a scripture that completely shattered my excuses and stirred me into action. It's found in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 to 11. And it says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man." Think about that. The ant doesn't need anyone to remind it of the season. It doesn't need a motivational speaker. It doesn't need the perfect conditions. It just does the work. It knows when it's time to move, and it moves. That's the wisdom of God hidden in the smallest of creatures, yet shouting the loudest lesson. No more excuses. Furthermore, let me be real with you. Excuses are seductive. They comfort you in your stagnation. They give you reasons to stay small, to delay, to blame someone else or something else. But here's what you need to understand. Excuses delay destiny. And the longer you wait to take responsibility, the further you drift from the life God has designed for you. Transitioning from that truth, I want you to understand something powerful. God never gives potential for the sake of decoration. If He placed it in you, He expects it to grow. Your talents, your ideas, your gifts, your voice, it's all there for impact, for purpose, for kingdom advancement. But nothing in your life will grow until you take ownership of what God placed in your hands. Still, many of us are stuck in the same place because we're waiting for someone to come and rescue us, validate us, give us permission to rise. But the word didn't say, wait for the angel to wake you. It says, how long will you lie there, O sluggard? In other words, God is saying, you get up, you move, you push. Now, shifting our focus slightly, I want to challenge your mindset today. You were not created to watch life from the sidelines. You were created to lead, to influence, to manifest the glory of God through productivity and purpose. But purpose isn't automatic. You must activate it through responsibility. Until you say, I take ownership of my time, my thoughts, my habits, my calling, nothing will change. Let me leave you with this thought. If an ant, which has no ruler, knows to gather its food and prepare for the future, what's your excuse? You have the Holy Spirit, you have the Word, you have the mind of Christ. You have breath in your lungs and power in your words. Push yourself. Make it happen. Stop waiting. Start moving. Because the season for slumber is over. The season for excuses is done. This is your wake-up call. Not tomorrow, not next month, now. Go to the ant. Consider its ways. Be wise and get to work. Let's build from here. To start with, do you know that God gave you potential? Let me tell you something that could change the way you see your life forever. God has already placed something inside you, and He's waiting to see what you'll do with it. You may not think it's much. You may even compare it to what others have and feel like you came up short. But the truth is this: you have something, and that something carries the seed of everything God wants to do through your life. In Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 to 29, Jesus tells a story that confronts us head on. It's the parable of the talents. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. He gave one 5 talents, another 2, and another 1, each according to their ability. Then he left. The one who had 5 went and traded and made 5 more. The one with 2 doubled his. But the one with just 1, he buried it, did nothing with it. And when the master returned, he praised the first 2 and said, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Then he took that 1 talent and gave it to the man who had 10. You see, God isn't impressed by how much you've been given. He's moved by how well you multiply it. Potential is not power until it's activated. It's not a guarantee. It's an opportunity. You have the chance to do something extraordinary, but if you bury your gift in fear, in excuses, or in laziness, you've already forfeited the increase. Likewise, in the real world, we see people who didn't start with much, no money, no support, no connections, but they had one thing, a decision to push, a choice to take what they had and do something with it. I think of entrepreneurs who started out selling items from the trunk of their cars and now lead global companies. I think of students who studied by candlelight in villages and are now doctors changing lives. I think of single mothers who turned their pain into purpose and now lead movements that impact nations. What did they do differently? They didn't bury it. They multiplied it. Moreover, some people are sitting on books they've never written, businesses they've never launched, ministries they've never started, all because they're waiting for more. But more never comes to those who won't move with what they have. God won't multiply what you refuse to move. Motion attracts. And yes, I understand. Maybe you've been hurt. Maybe you tried before and failed. Maybe people laughed at your effort or criticized your dream. But here's what I want you to hear today. God didn't give you that idea, that talent, that dream to bury it in fear. He gave it to you so you could reflect His creativity, His excellence, His glory through your diligence. Now then, let me challenge your perspective. The servant who buried his talent wasn't punished because he lost it. He didn't even try. That's what made him wicked. He refused to participate in his own increase. And unfortunately, many believers today are praying for harvests in fields they haven't planted. They want God to rain blessings on empty soil. But God is saying, what did you do with what I gave you? Furthermore, notice the reward of the faithful servants. The master didn't just give them more talents. He gave them more responsibility. That means multiplication isn't just about increase. It's about impact and trust. When you push, when you grow, when you multiply, what's in your hand? God opens doors and elevates your influence. But when you shrink back, you stay small. Not because God rejected you, but because you chose to play it safe. And let me be clear. You don't have to be the most talented, the most educated, or the most gifted. You just have to be faithful with what's in your hand. And if you are, the God who gave it to you will back you with favor, with opportunity, and with increase you couldn't orchestrate on your own. So the question isn't, what do you lack? The question is, what are you doing with what you already have? That idea, that voice, that skill, that testimony, that experience, that time, that network, that one talent. Don't bury it. Build with it. Push it. Multiply it. Make it happen. Because when you take what God gave you and you give it back to Him with effort, He breathes on it. And what once looked small begins to shake nations. Don't wait for perfect. Don't wait for more. Move now with what you've got. Multiply it and watch God meet your push with His power. Get ready to discover the power of faith. Let's be honest. Faith sounds powerful when we say it out loud. We shout, I believe, I have faith, God will do it. And yes, those are powerful declarations. But the question is, what are you doing while you're believing? Because faith is not magic. Faith is not laziness wrapped in spiritual language. Faith is movement. It's motion. It's doing something, even when you're not sure how it will all work out. James chapter 2, verse 17 to 20 says it plain and clear. Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. Yea, a man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? That verse shook me the first time I really sat with it, because it exposed a dangerous comfort zone many believers live in. We say we have faith, but there's no movement attached to it. We're praying, but we're not preparing. We're believing, but we're not building. We're declaring, but we're not developing. And the Bible doesn't call that faith, it calls it dead. Now take a moment and reflect on this. When was the last time you put work behind your faith? Not just ideas. Not just dreams, actual effort, real discipline, strategic planning, sacrificial consistency. If your answer is, it's been a while, then maybe what you've been calling faith is actually just wishful thinking, dressed in church clothes. On the other hand, I've seen people who understand this principle, people who don't just believe God for increase, but build with their hands while they believe. I know a young woman who dreamed of becoming a lawyer. She didn't have the money, didn't have the connections, and she was the first in her family to ever pursue university education. But she didn't stop at prayer. She applied for scholarships. She studied like her life depended on it. She volunteered at legal clinics just to gain exposure. She pushed, she worked, and God opened doors. Today, she's not just a lawyer. She's changing policies that affect entire communities. Why? Because she put legs on her faith. Similarly, I know a man who wanted to start a business. He prayed every day, laid hands on his notebook, fasted for 21 days straight. But he didn't stop there. He took business courses, he read books, he asked questions, he made mistakes, he adjusted, he sacrificed. And little by little, what started as a dream became a movement. Because faith without works is dead, but faith with works is destiny in motion. Yet many of us are waiting for God to do what He already empowered us to start. We're waiting for a voice from heaven, while God is waiting for movement from earth. We say, God, send the opportunity, and God is saying, I already gave you the idea. Build it. In fact, if you look at every major moment in Scripture, every miracle, every breakthrough, you'll find a person who did something. The woman with the issue of blood pressed through the crowd. The blind man shouted despite opposition. Noah built the ark when there wasn't a drop of rain. David ran toward Goliath. Even Jesus, our Savior, sweat, walked, bled, prayed, fasted, endured, obeyed. Faith without action is just theory. But when you move with what you believe, heaven responds. Let's make it clear, this is not about earning God's love. You already have that. It's about honoring God's investment in you. He gave you breath, strength, resources, insight. What are you doing with it? Are you waiting for signs, or are you becoming the sign that others are waiting for? And if you've been stuck, if you've been feeling stagnant, maybe it's not because your faith is weak, but because your effort has stopped. Maybe you're asking God for fruit and He's asking you, where are the seeds? This is your moment to shift, to rise, to put motion behind your belief and say, God, I'm not just going to say I trust you, I'm going to show you. So I challenge you today, not just to believe, build. Not just to pray, push. Not just to declare, do. Because when your faith becomes functional, your life becomes fruitful. And that's the kind of faith that doesn't just inspire people, it moves mountains. Let's take a closer look at discipline, the engine of destiny. There comes a moment when passion alone is not enough. Dreams are beautiful. Vision is inspiring. But without discipline, they evaporate. They become nothing more than wishful thinking wrapped in emotion. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where God is calling you. It's not flashy, it's not glamorous, but it is absolutely essential. You can shout, I'm destined for greatness all day long, but if you don't have the habits to support it, you'll collapse under the weight of your own calling. The Apostle Paul understood this clearly. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 to 27, he writes, Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run, that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I not as one that beateth the air, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection. You hear that? Paul is saying, I discipline my body. I train like an athlete. I don't just talk. I run to win. He wasn't talking about physical exercise alone. He was talking about life, about purpose, about the hard, unseen work of becoming who God created you to be. He understood that without discipline, vision dies in daydreams. Discipline is what turns the spiritual into the practical. Now let's take a step further. Daniel was one of the wisest and most favored men in the Bible. But do you know what made him stand out in a foreign land, surrounded by temptation and pressure? It wasn't his talent alone. It was his routine. The Bible tells us that 3 times a day, no matter what law was passed, no matter who was watching, Daniel knelt to pray. That discipline didn't just keep him grounded. It opened the windows of heaven over his life. Even the lions couldn't eat a man whose life was structured around the presence of God. That's the kind of discipline that builds unshakable men and women. Not the kind that reacts to emotions, but the kind that builds a rhythm of strength, even when it's inconvenient. Because destiny isn't built in the spotlight. It's built in silence. When no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when it's just you, your God, and your daily decisions. Furthermore, look around at anyone who's built something meaningful. They all have one thing in common. They've mastered the mundane. They show up when they don't feel like it. They prepare when others procrastinate. They get up early. They stay consistent. They've traded hype for habits. Whether it's a leader who's built a global ministry, or a single mother who raised world changers, or a business owner who started with nothing, the common denominator is discipline. Let me say this clearly. Discipline is not punishment. It's protection. It protects your vision from your moods. It protects your calling from your comfort zone. It ensures that what God whispered in your spirit actually shows up in your life. And if you've been feeling frustrated because your life isn't reflecting your vision, maybe the issue isn't your dream, it's your discipline. Too many people pray for new seasons while maintaining old habits. They want God to do something fresh, but they're still waking up late, still scrolling for hours, still neglecting the small things that matter. But hear me, you cannot walk in divine purpose with undisciplined patterns. God is calling us to excellence, and excellence starts with how you manage your time, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, your energy. I get it. Discipline isn't exciting, it's not loud, it doesn't come with applause, but it builds foundations that storms can't shake. It builds character that fame can destroy. And it attracts favor because God can trust people who are consistent when no one is looking. So if you're serious about making your life count, if you're tired of repeating the same cycles and never seeing progress, then it's time to stop waiting for motivation and start building discipline. Choose structure, choose accountability, choose habits that match your destiny, because discipline is the engine that moves the dream forward. Without it, you'll keep circling the same mountain, calling it spiritual warfare, when it's really just poor self-management. Today, decide that you will no longer treat your life casually. Decide that every day matters, that your mornings matter, that your priorities matter, that your routines matter, that how you do anything is how you do everything. Because the future God has prepared for you isn't just unlocked by prayer, it's accessed through discipline. And if you're willing to align your daily life with the greatness inside you, if you're willing to train like Paul, pray like Daniel, and show up like it matters, then nothing can stop you from fulfilling your calling. Not your past, not your fear, not the enemy, not even time. Because with discipline, you stop dreaming about destiny and you start driving it. Let me guide you through how to overcome obstacles through God's strength. Life doesn't always go the way we planned, does it? Sometimes it hits you so hard, it knocks the wind out of your soul. Plans fall apart, people walk away, opportunities close, and just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it does. It's in those moments that the enemy whispers, "You're finished." You are not alone, and you are not without help. Because the truth is, the strength you need doesn't come from you. It comes from God. Philippians chapter 4 verse 13 gives us a lifeline. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Not some things, not convenient things, all things, even the hard things, even the painful things, even the things you never imagined you'd survive. Paul wrote that verse from a prison cell, not a palace. He was locked up, facing pressure on every side, and yet he declared, I can. Why? Because he understood a secret many of us forget. When you're at your weakest, God's strength shows up the strongest. Moving forward, let's be real. Obstacles will come. Pain is part of the process. Life isn't fair, but it is purposeful. And if you're going to push yourself and make it happen, you need more than motivation. You need resilience. You need boldness. You need the kind of inner fire that doesn't come from hype. It comes from heaven. I remember a woman who lost everything in a fire. Her home, her business, her sense of security. For weeks she cried. She questioned God. She felt like quitting. But one day she got up, opened her Bible, and read Philippians chapter 4, verse 13 out loud. She kept repeating it until it broke something inside her. Then she wiped her tears, picked up the pieces, and started rebuilding from scratch. Today, that woman owns a chain of businesses across multiple cities, and do you know what she says? It wasn't my strength, it was His. I pushed, but God carried me. In addition, let me remind you, God never wastes pain. Every tear, every scar, every disappointment, it's a tool in His hands. He uses pressure to produce power. He uses hardship to build holiness. He uses brokenness to birth purpose. You think the trial was meant to crush you, but it was actually designed to awaken the strength that's been buried in you all along. Think of a diamond. It isn't formed in beauty, it's formed in pressure. Hidden beneath the surface in the darkest places under the heaviest weight. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you feel buried, overwhelmed, forgotten. But let me tell you, you're not buried, you're being planted. And when God waters what He planted in pain, it grows into something glorious. Furthermore, don't confuse the silence of God with the absence of God. He may not always speak when you want Him to, but He's strengthening you in ways you can't yet see. And just because the road is hard doesn't mean you're not called. Sometimes the greatest evidence that you're on the right path is the resistance you're facing. The devil doesn't fight what isn't a threat. So if all hell is breaking loose around you, maybe it's because heaven is rising up within you. I want to challenge you to see your obstacles differently. They're not walls meant to stop you. They're weights meant to strengthen you. Every delay, every rejection, every closed door is working something eternal inside you. And if you keep pushing, not in your own strength, but in God's strength, you will look back and thank God, not just for the victory, but for the valley that led you there. And hear this, you don't have to fake strength. You don't have to wear a mask and act like you're okay when you're breaking inside. What you need to do is surrender. Cry if you must, limp if you must, but don't stop moving. Don't stop praying. Don't stop believing, because the same God who gave you the dream will give you the grace to fulfill it. You are not weak. You are being refined. And what feels like a setback is actually a setup for the next season of your life. So today, if you're in a fight, if you're under pressure, if you're facing the storm, don't retreat. Don't fold. Push through with God. Lean on Him. Call on Him. Trust in Him. Because the power that raised Christ from the dead is the same power working in you. And when that power is active in your life, no obstacle can override your obedience, and no trial can cancel your triumph. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to lean in, stand tall, and say with all your heart, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Because with Him, you're not just going through it, you're growing through it. And when it's all said and done, your story won't just be one of survival. It will be a testimony of strength, of grace, and of the unstoppable power of God working through your life. Together, let's uncover the power of vision and focus. There's a reason why so many people feel stuck, frustrated, or burnt out. Not because they're lazy, and not because they're not trying, but because they're busy doing everything except what they were born to do. When you don't have vision, you chase distractions. You start strong in every direction, but you finish nowhere. That's why today's message is so important. Because without vision, your life becomes motion without meaning. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2 to 3 gives us a divine blueprint. It says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Do you see that? God didn't just say, have vision. He said, write it, make it plain, make it visible, make it so clear that whoever reads it can run with it. In other words, Vision is not just an idea, it's instruction. It tells your feet where to go. It tells your time what to serve. It tells your emotions what to ignore. Vision is what gives your effort direction. Now let's be clear, life is loud. Distractions are everywhere, notifications, opinions, opportunities that look good but aren't God. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your entire life reacting to life instead of living on purpose. You'll be so busy scrolling that you stop seeking, so busy comparing that you stop creating, so busy pleasing people that you miss the very assignment heaven put in your spirit. Likewise, many of us have allowed distractions to disconnect us from destiny. God gave us a vision, but somewhere along the line we started entertaining everything and everyone that had nothing to do with it. And the danger with distractions is that they don't always look evil. They often look attractive. But just because it's popular doesn't mean it's purposeful. Just because it's urgent doesn't mean it's divine. That's why you need vision, because vision helps you say no to good things so you can say yes to God things. Let me tell you something powerful. Vision is not just for leaders, entrepreneurs, or preachers. Vision is for anyone who wants to live a life that matters. Vision keeps you grounded when your emotions want to wander. Vision tells you, this is what I'm building, so this is how I spend my time. This is what God showed me, so this is who I align with. This is where I'm going, so this is what I must ignore. Without vision, your energy gets wasted on things that don't build anything eternal. Think of an architect. Before a single brick is laid, the vision is written, detailed, mapped out, and measured. Because you can't build what you can't see. And the same applies to your life. If you don't know what you're building, you'll keep starting projects you're never supposed to finish. You'll say yes to people you're supposed to walk away from. You'll invest time into things that don't bear fruit. Additionally, don't get discouraged if your vision hasn't come to pass yet. Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3 reminds us, the vision is for an appointed time. That means timing is part of the plan. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. It means you're still in the waiting room of heaven. But while you wait, keep preparing, keep writing, keep building. Because vision is not just about arrival, it's about alignment. You may not be there yet, but when your daily habits align with your divine vision, you're already on your way. And if you've lost your vision somewhere along the way, you can get it back. Go back into prayer. Go back to your journal. Go back to that moment where God whispered something so bold it scared you. And then ask him, Lord, remind me what you said. Because when God gives vision, he also gives provision. He also gives clarity. He also gives grace to run with it. Let me leave you with this. Focus is the fuel of vision. You can't build a focused life with a scattered mind. You can't walk in purpose while chasing every voice and every trend. The ones who leave a mark are the ones who shut out the noise and lock in on what matters. So today, make a decision. Not to just be busy, but to be focused. Not to just be active, but to be aligned. Not to just dream, but to see. Because once your eyes are opened to divine vision, your life will never drift again. You will walk like you know where you're going. You will speak like you understand your assignment. And you will push, not aimlessly, but intentionally. Because you have a vision, and that vision is leading you straight into destiny. Now hear this. This is very crucial. Surround yourself with purpose partners. Some battles in life aren't lost because you lack talent, vision, or even faith, but because you are surrounded by the wrong people. Let that sink in. You can be called, gifted, anointed, but if you walk with people who don't align with your purpose, you'll start drifting from the very thing God assigned you to do. Who you walk with matters. And sometimes it's not the devil that's slowing you down, it's your circle. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17 tells us something simple yet profound. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. That means your relationships either sharpen you or dull you. They either ignite your potential or extinguish it. And you've got to be bold enough to ask, who am I becoming around these people? Because the truth is, your environment has a voice. It speaks to your decisions. It shapes your energy. It influences your standards. And over time, it begins to mold your future. Now, consider David and Jonathan. David was anointed to be king, but the road to that throne wasn't easy. He had to run, hide, fight, survive betrayal, and endure rejection. But in the middle of all that chaos, God gave him Jonathan, a friend who believed in his destiny, even when the crown wasn't yet visible. Jonathan didn't compete with David. He didn't envy his calling. He protected it. He encouraged it. He pushed David forward even when his own father, Saul, was trying to pull David down. That's a purpose partner. That's iron sharpening iron. Similarly, think about Moses. When God called him, Moses tried to disqualify himself. He said, I'm not eloquent, I'm not good with words. So what did God do? He gave him Aaron, a brother who could speak for him, stand with him, and help him carry out the assignment. Because even the strongest leaders need support. Even the most anointed people need accountability. No one rises alone. On the other hand, we've all seen what happens when someone's circle doesn't match their calling. The wrong voices will always make you question what God already confirmed. They'll feed your fears instead of your faith. They'll mock your discipline instead of honoring your growth. And little by little, your fire starts to fade. That's why you've got to protect your circle like your destiny depends on it, because it does. Moreover, in the real world, look at successful individuals in business, ministry, family, or any area of life. They don't just have vision, they have alignment. They're surrounded by people who challenge them, stretch them, and speak truth even when it's uncomfortable, because when iron sharpens iron, sparks will fly. But those sparks refine. They don't destroy. If you're constantly the most driven person in your group, it's time to level up your environment. Get around people who make you want to pray deeper, study harder, dream bigger, live bolder. Get around people who don't let you settle for average when God called you to be excellent. Because the right people will not let you quit. They'll remind you why you started. Let me say this in closing. Destiny is too important to leave to casual connection. Surround yourself with people who pull you toward purpose, not comfort. Choose relationships that sharpen your faith, not your fears. Because in this journey you will need people not just to walk beside you, but to push you forward when life gets heavy. And when you find those people, honor them, keep them, and grow with them. Because iron sharpens iron. And your future depends on it. Listen close. I must tell you this. Stop waiting for perfect. Start with what you have. Perfection is a myth that has kept far too many people stuck in neutral. We say things like, I'm just waiting for the right time, or once everything lines up, I'll start. But here's the hard truth. Waiting for perfect is the fastest route to never starting. If you're always preparing but never moving, then you're not being strategic. You're being paralyzed by fear, dressed up as caution. So Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4 to 6 confronts this mindset directly. That observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand. It's the word telling us, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never plant anything. And if you never plant, you'll never harvest. That means stop checking the forecast of life and just sow. Just move. Just start. Because faithful movement invites divine momentum. Let's not forget Gideon. When God called him a mighty warrior, he was hiding in fear, convinced he wasn't qualified. He kept saying, I'm the least in my family, I'm not ready. But God didn't wait for him to feel ready. God said, go in this thy might. In other words, start with what you have right now, right where you are. And when Gideon finally moved, God met him in motion, not in hiding. Or consider Moses, who gave God a list of excuses. I can't speak. I'm not eloquent. Send someone else. But God wasn't asking Moses to be perfect. He was asking him to be obedient. And it was Moses' decision to move, even while trembling, that became the foundation of Israel's deliverance. In the same way, your breakthrough won't begin when you have it all figured out. It will begin when you act in faith with what you already carry. You don't need more confirmation, you need more courage. You don't need a perfect plan, you need a willing heart. And yes, you might stumble, you might fail, but God honors faith in motion. The boat didn't split open when Peter stepped out. It held because he dared to walk. You don't get divine results from safe living. You get them from stepping out, even when you're unsure of the outcome. So today, silence the voice of perfectionism. Lay procrastination at the altar and decide, I will no longer wait for ideal, I will obey now. Because delayed obedience is still disobedience. And sometimes the thing that's holding up your blessing isn't the devil, it's your hesitation. Whatever you've been sitting on, a book, a ministry, a business, a dream, a new habit, start scared, start small, start unsure, but start. Because when you do, you'll discover what Ecclesiastes was teaching us all along. When you move in faith, God moves in power. And the beautiful part is, God doesn't require you to finish it all in one day. He just asks you to begin. He's not asking for perfection. He's asking for obedience. Because when you start with what you have, even if it's a little, even if it's imperfect, even if it feels like not enough, He multiplies it. Think about the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. In the natural, it wasn't enough, but he gave what he had. He didn't say, let me wait until I have enough for everyone. No, he surrendered his little, and Jesus fed thousands. That's what God does. When you offer your obedience, no matter how small, He breathes on it. That's why Ecclesiastes chapter 11 says, in the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand. Because you never know which moment of movement will unlock the miracle. It's not your job to predict the outcome. It's your job to take the step. Plant the seed, write the plan, make the call, pray the prayer, speak the vision, and keep sowing, even when you're unsure what will come of it. Eventually, perfectionism will always lie to you. It says, you're not ready. But God says, you're already equipped. It says it has to be flawless. But God says, just be faithful. It says, later is better. But God says, now is the time. So today, make a decision to break the cycle of hesitation. Push past the pressure to have everything figured out. Your destiny won't wait for your fear to go away. And your purpose can't unfold in theory. It requires action. Start with the little insight, the small strength, the partial plan. Start with that. Because the moment you do, you'll find out that the same God who gave you the idea has already gone ahead of you to make the way. You don't need to be confident to begin. You just need to be committed. Because once you move, God moves. Once you sow, the heavens respond. And what looked like a small, imperfect beginning becomes something glorious. Not because you had it all together, but because you trusted Him enough to start. So stop waiting for perfect. Push yourself and make it happen. Next, align your push with God's purpose. There comes a point where you have to ask yourself a deeper question. Not just am I making progress, but am I aligned with God? Because you can be pushing with all your strength, reaching milestone after milestone. But if your push is not rooted in God's purpose, you're just exhausting yourself for things that won't last. It's possible to succeed by the world's standard and still fail heaven's assignment. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 to 2 says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Notice that. It doesn't say your will. It says the will of God. Because His will is where your strength multiplies. His will is where your peace is anchored. His will is where your purpose becomes fruitful. That's why alignment matters. Because anything built outside of God becomes a burden. But when you push in harmony with His direction, even hard work becomes grace-filled. Interestingly, I remember a man who chased money for years. Corporate success, recognition, accolades. On paper, he had it all. But something was missing. He was burnt out, restless, and spiritually dry. One day he surrendered, dropped the image, and asked, Lord, what do you want from my life? That one question changed everything. He shifted careers, aligned with kingdom work, and today he's more fulfilled with less spotlight than he ever was in the boardroom. Why? Because alignment births fulfillment, not applause. So before you push further, pause and ask, is this God's idea or mine? Because success outside of God is still failure. But when your push flows from His purpose, you don't just move, you advance with anointing. And that kind of progress, my friend, is unstoppable. And the beautiful part is, when you're aligned with God's purpose, you're not striving alone. You're being carried by grace. You're not trying to force doors open. God opens them in His timing. You're not chasing validation. You're walking in confirmation. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says clearly, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. That means when your mind is renewed and your motives purified, you begin to recognize and live out God's perfect plan, not just your personal ambition. So many people are drained not because they're not working hard, but because they're working outside their divine lane. They've built something impressive, but it's not blessed. They've gained platforms, but lost peace. Because the push wasn't spirit-led, it was self-driven. And while God can still redeem those efforts, He's inviting us to something higher, not just chasing dreams, but pursuing destiny. That's where real power flows. That's where endurance is born. Because when you're aligned, storms don't stop you, they strengthen you. Criticism doesn't break you, it refines you. Delays don't discourage you, they prepare you. Because you know deep inside, I'm not pushing for my glory, I'm pushing for God's purpose.